My sister-in-law convinced my husband to quit his job and move in with her while I was recovering from surgery, then told him I was the one who planned to leave him. I'm 28 years old and have been married to Ryan, who's 30, for 3 years now. We met in college during our final year and hit it off immediately. Ryan was studying engineering, and I was pursuing a degree in marketing. We bonded over our shared love for outdoor activities and our dreams of traveling the world together. Our relationship progressed quickly, and we moved in together shortly after graduation. Ryan landed a job at a local engineering firm, while I started working for a marketing agency. Everything seemed perfect, and we were excited about our future together. However, there was one aspect of our relationship that always caused tension: Ryan's younger sister, Emma, who's 26. From the beginning, Emma made it clear that she wasn't happy about our relationship. She and Ryan had always been incredibly close, and it seemed like she saw me as a threat to their bond. At first, I tried to be understanding. I knew that siblings could be protective of each other, and I hoped that Emma would warm up to me over time. I made efforts to include her in our plans and even suggested that we have regular family dinners together. But no matter what I did, Emma remained cold and distant towards me. As time went on, Emma's behavior became more problematic. She would often call Ryan late at night, claiming she needed his help with something urgent. More often than not, these emergencies turned out to be minor issues that she could have easily handled on her own. Ryan, being the caring brother he is, would always rush to her aid, even if it meant canceling our plans. When Ryan and I got engaged, Emma's attitude worsened. She constantly made snide remarks about how I wasn't good enough for her brother and how he could do better. She would reminisce about Ryan's ex-girlfriends in front of me, subtly suggesting that they were a better fit for him. These comments hurt, but I tried not to let them get to me. Our wedding day should have been the happiest day of our lives, but Emma found ways to make it about her. She gave a speech that was more about her relationship with Ryan than about our marriage. She barely mentioned me and spent most of the time talking about their childhood memories. It was uncomfortable for everyone present, but Ryan brushed it off, saying she was just emotional about her big brother getting married. After we got married, I hoped things would improve. I thought that once Emma saw how happy Ryan was, she would accept our relationship. But if anything, her behavior became even more possessive. She would show up at our house unannounced, often when Ryan was at work, claiming she needed to check on her brother. Despite these issues, Ryan and I managed to build a good life together. We both advanced in our careers, bought a house, and started talking about having children. But Emma was always there, lurking in the background, ready to insert herself into our lives at any moment. About 2 months ago, I had to undergo major surgery. It was a procedure I'd been putting off for years, but my doctor insisted it couldn't wait any longer. The surgery itself went well, but the recovery period was tough. I was bedridden for several weeks and needed a lot of help with daily tasks. Ryan was supportive at first. He took time off work to help me recover, even though I told him it wasn't necessary. I appreciated his care, but I also knew it was putting a strain on his job. His boss wasn't thrilled about him taking so much time off, especially since they were in the middle of a big project. It was during this time that Emma started to become more present in our lives again. At first, she offered to help with my recovery, which surprised me. I thought maybe she was finally warming up to me. But it quickly became clear that her real intention was to spend more time with Ryan. She started coming over every day, ostensibly to help but mostly just to talk to Ryan. She would sit with him for hours, reminiscing about their childhood and talking about their family. I often felt left out of these conversations, stuck in bed while they chatted in the living room. As the weeks went by, I noticed Ryan starting to act distant. He wouldn't talk to me as much and was constantly texting on his phone. When I asked him about it, he said Emma was going through a tough time and needed his support. Apparently, she had recently broken up with her boyfriend and was struggling to cope. I tried to be understanding, but it was hard not to feel frustrated. Here I was, recovering from major surgery, and my husband seemed more concerned about his sister's breakup than my well-being. Things came to a head when Ryan told me he was considering quitting his job. I was shocked. He had always loved his work and was on track for a promotion. When I asked him why he would even consider such a drastic move, he explained that Emma had suggested he leave his job and move in with her for a while. According to Ryan, Emma was struggling financially after her breakup and needed help paying her rent. She had convinced him that he could use this time to clear his head and figure out what he really wanted to do with his life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It seemed like Emma had completely manipulated the situation to her advantage. I tried to reason with Ryan. I reminded him of how hard he had worked to get where he was in his career. I pointed out that Emma was an adult and should be able to manage her own finances. But Ryan was adamant that his sister needed him. Our argument that night was intense. I felt like I was losing my husband to his sister's manipulations. Ryan accused me of being unsupportive and selfish, not understanding the importance of family. I couldn't believe he was saying these things to me, especially when I was still recovering from surgery. As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, I realized that our marriage was in serious trouble. Emma had always been a problem, but now she had driven a wedge between us that I wasn't sure we could overcome. I felt alone and scared, unsure of what the future held for us. Update 1. After my initial post, I took some time to reflect on the situation and gather my thoughts. Many people who responded to my post suggested that I confront Ryan directly about the issue with Emma. I knew they were right. We needed to have an honest conversation about what was happening to our marriage. I waited until I was feeling a bit stronger physically before initiating the conversation. One evening, after Ryan came home from work, I asked him to sit down with me. I explained that we needed to talk seriously about our relationship and the impact Emma was having on it. I started by telling Ryan how much I was struggling with his decision to potentially leave his job and move in with Emma. I reminded him of all the hard work he had put into his career and how close he was to a promotion. I also pointed out that this decision wasn't just affecting him, it was affecting our entire future as a couple. I tried to be as calm and rational as possible, explaining that while I understood his desire to help his sister, it felt like our marriage was taking a backseat to Emma's needs. I told him how hurt I felt that he seemed more concerned about Emma's breakup than my recovery from surgery. Ryan's reaction was not what I had hoped for. Instead of listening to my concerns, he became defensive immediately. He accused me of being unsupportive of his family and not understanding the bond he shared with Emma. He said that Emma had been there for him his entire life and that he couldn't just abandon her when she needed him. I was taken aback by his response. It felt like I was talking to a completely different person, not the man I had married. Emma's influence over him was clearly stronger than I had realized. As our conversation continued, Ryan dropped a bombshell that left me speechless. He told me that Emma had shown him text messages that supposedly proved I was planning to leave him once I recovered from my surgery. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had never sent any such messages, and I told Ryan as much. Ryan insisted that the messages were real. He said that Emma had borrowed my phone briefly while I was recovering, and that's when she discovered the messages. According to Ryan, the texts were between me and a friend, discussing my plans to leave him once I was back on my feet. I was completely blindsided by this accusation. It was clear to me that Emma had either faked these messages or sent them to herself from my phone. I tried to explain this to Ryan, but he was already convinced of my supposed betrayal. He refused to believe that Emma would lie about something so serious. I asked Ryan to show me these alleged messages, but he said Emma had only shown them to him briefly and hadn't sent him copies. This made me even more certain that the whole thing was a fabrication on Emma's part. The conversation quickly deteriorated from there. Ryan accused me of never liking his sister and always trying to come between them. He brought up instances from the past where he felt I had been unsupportive of his relationship with Emma. It was as if every minor disagreement we'd ever had about Emma was now being used as evidence against me. I tried to defend myself, reminding Ryan of all the times I had made an effort with Emma despite her constant hostility towards me. I brought up the family dinners I had organized, the times I had included her in our plans, and how I had always encouraged Ryan to maintain a close relationship with his sister. But it seemed like none of that mattered to him now. As the argument escalated, I realized that Ryan was not in a state to listen to reason. Emma's manipulation had been so effective that he was unable to see the situation clearly. In a moment of frustration, I told Ryan that if he was going to believe Emma over his own wife, then maybe he should just go and live with her like he wanted. I regretted the words as soon as they left my mouth, but to my shock, Ryan took them seriously. He got up, went to our bedroom, and started packing a bag. I followed him, trying to talk sense into him, but he was determined. He said he needed some time away to think things through. As I watched Ryan pack his things, I felt a mix of anger, hurt, and disbelief. How had we gotten to this point? How had Emma managed to come between us so effectively? I wanted to beg Ryan to stay, to fight for our marriage, but I also knew that if he was willing to walk out on me based on Emma's lies, then maybe we had bigger problems than I had realized. Ryan left that night, saying he would be staying with Emma for a while. As the door closed behind him, I sank to the floor, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. I was still recovering from surgery, and now I found myself alone, abandoned by my husband because of his sister's manipulations. The next few days were difficult. I alternated between anger at Ryan for believing Emma's lies and sadness at the state of our marriage. I reached out to my friends and family for support, and they were shocked to hear what had happened. Many of them had witnessed Emma's behavior over the years and couldn't believe that Ryan had fallen for her manipulations so completely. I considered reaching out to Ryan, but every time I picked up my phone to call or text him, I stopped myself. I realized that until he was willing to see Emma's behavior for what it was, any attempt at reconciliation would be futile. As I focused on my physical recovery, I also started to think about what this meant for the future of our marriage. I had always known that Emma was a problem, but I never imagined she would be able to drive us apart like this. I began to question whether Ryan and I could ever have a healthy relationship as long as Emma was in the picture. Update 2: It had been a few weeks since Ryan left to live with Emma, and the situation had only become more complicated. I was still trying to process everything that had happened when I received an unexpected call from Adam, Ryan's best friend since high school. Adam and I had always gotten along well. He was one of the few people who seemed to understand the issues with Emma and had often acted as a mediator between Ryan and me when conflicts arose. When I saw his name on my phone screen, I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. As soon as I answered, I could tell that Adam was concerned. He had heard about what happened from Ryan, but he felt like he wasn't getting the full story. Adam told me that Emma had been spreading rumors within their friend group, claiming that I had been cheating on Ryan and that's why I had planned to leave him after my surgery. I was furious when I heard this. Not only had Emma faked text messages, but now she was actively trying to ruin my reputation among our friends. I explained everything to Adam: the surgery, Emma's increasing presence in our lives, the fake texts, and Ryan's decision to leave. Adam listened patiently, and I could tell he was troubled by what he was hearing. Adam confided in me that he had always found Emma's relationship with Ryan to be uncomfortably close, but he never thought she would go this far. He promised to talk to Ryan and try to make him see reason. I appreciated Adam's support, but I wasn't sure if it would make a difference at this point. A few days after my conversation with Adam, I was surprised to find Ryan at my door. He looked tired and conflicted. He told me that Adam had spoken to him, and it had made him start questioning some things. Ryan admitted that certain aspects of Emma's story didn't add up, particularly the alleged text messages that he now couldn't seem to find on Emma's phone. As we talked, I could see that Ryan was struggling to reconcile his loyalty to Emma with the growing realization that she might have been manipulating him. He apologized for leaving so abruptly and for not giving me a chance to properly defend myself against Emma's accusations. For a moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe Ryan was finally seeing Emma's behavior for what it was. Maybe we could start to rebuild our relationship. But just as we were beginning to have a real conversation, our discussion was interrupted by Emma herself. Emma burst into the house, clearly agitated. She accused me of trying to manipulate Ryan and turn him against her. She rehashed all of her previous accusations, claiming that I had never accepted her as part of Ryan's life and that I had always tried to come between them. I tried to remain calm, but Emma's behavior was so outrageous that I couldn't help but defend myself. I pointed out all the times I had tried to include her in our lives, despite her constant hostility towards me. I challenged her to produce the text messages she claimed to have seen, knowing full well that she couldn't. Throughout this confrontation, Ryan stood silently, looking back and forth between Emma and me. I could see the conflict on his face, but he seemed unable or unwilling to intervene. It was at that moment that I realized how deep Emma's hold on him truly was. Even in the face of Emma's clearly irrational behavior, Ryan couldn't bring himself to stand up to his sister. He couldn't choose our marriage over his dysfunctional relationship with Emma. It was a painful realization, but one that I knew I needed to accept. After Emma's outburst, I asked them both to leave. I told Ryan that until he was ready to set proper boundaries with his sister and prioritize our marriage, we had nothing more to discuss. Ryan looked pained, but he left with Emma, once again choosing her over me. In the days that followed, I did a lot of thinking about my marriage and what I wanted for my future. I realized that as much as I loved Ryan, I couldn't continue in a relationship where I always came second to his sister. I deserved a partner who would stand by me, who would choose me. I started to consider the possibility that my marriage might be over. The thought was painful, but I also felt a sense of relief. I had spent so much time and energy trying to navigate the complex dynamics with Emma, and I was tired. I was ready to focus on myself, my recovery, and building a life where I didn't have to constantly compete for my partner's attention and loyalty. Update 3: In the weeks following the confrontation with Emma, I made the difficult decision to go no contact with both her and Ryan. I needed space to heal, both physically from my surgery and emotionally from the turmoil of the past few months. I moved out of our shared apartment and stayed with a close friend while I figured out my next steps. It was challenging to leave the home Ryan and I had built together, but I knew it was necessary for my mental health. During this time, Ryan reached out several times. He left voicemails and sent text messages, alternating between apologizing and trying to explain his actions. Part of me wanted to respond, to give our relationship one more chance, but I knew that nothing had fundamentally changed. Ryan was still unwilling or unable to set proper boundaries with Emma, and I couldn't go back to that situation. I focused on my recovery and started to rebuild my life. I returned to work, started seeing a therapist to process everything that had happened, and reconnected with friends I had somewhat neglected during my marriage. Slowly but surely, I started to feel like myself again. As I gained clarity and distance from the situation, I became more certain that ending my marriage was the right decision. I contacted a lawyer and began the process of filing for divorce. It was a painful step, but I knew it was necessary. When Ryan found out about the divorce proceedings, he made one last attempt to reconcile. He came to my new apartment, promising that things would be different, that he would set boundaries with Emma. But I had heard these promises before, and I no longer believed them. I told Ryan that while I cared for him, I couldn't continue in a marriage where I always came second to his sister. Emma, predictably, didn't take the news of our impending divorce well. She continued to spread rumors about me among our mutual friends, claiming that I was the one who had ruined the marriage. Some people believed her, but many saw through her lies. I was grateful for the friends who stood by me during this difficult time. As the divorce proceedings moved forward, I focused on rebuilding my life and planning for my future. It was a challenging process, but I knew it was necessary for my well-being. Ryan and I communicated primarily through our lawyers during this time. We had to work out the details of separating our finances and dividing our shared assets. It was a stark reminder of how intertwined our lives had become over the years, and untangling everything was both emotionally and logistically difficult. Throughout this process, Emma continued to be a presence in the background. I heard from mutual friends that she was still speaking negatively about me and trying to paint herself as the victim in the situation. While it was frustrating, I made a conscious decision not to engage with her or her rumors. I knew that responding would only give her more ammunition and drag out a situation I was trying to move past. As the divorce neared finalization, I started to feel a sense of relief. The constant stress and tension of the past few months began to lift. I realized that while I still cared for Ryan, I no longer wanted to be in a relationship where I had to constantly compete for my partner's attention and loyalty. I began to make plans for my future. I considered taking a job opportunity in another city, something I had always wanted to do but had put off because of my marriage. The idea of a fresh start in a new place was appealing, and it felt like a chance to truly move on from this chapter of my life. Reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized that while the experience had been painful, it had also taught me valuable lessons about self-worth and the importance of healthy boundaries in relationships. I knew that in my future relationships, I would be more aware of these issues and better equipped to address them. As I signed the final divorce papers, I felt a mix of sadness and hope. It was the end of a significant chapter in my life, but also the beginning of a new one. I was looking forward to focusing on my own growth and happiness, free from the constant drama and tension that had characterized the last few years of my marriage. In the end, while I never expected my marriage to end this way, I knew I had made the right decision for myself. I was ready to move forward, stronger and wiser from the experience.